Our last little part of World War II beginning. Remember, France falls pretty quickly, as they did in World War I. The French really can't fight their way in a paper bag. We bail them out in World War I, World War II, and Vietnam. Yet they're pretty rude to Americans when you go over there. Now, to preface this, remember we have the Miracle of Dunkirk. The English get out, and in 1940 we get a new Prime Minister of England. Out is Neville Chamberlain, and he's replaced with a former Secretary of the Navy of England. His name is Winston Churchill, and he is a really good friend of FDR's at this point. Churchill has a completely different mentality than Neville Chamberlain. He didn't think that we should have signed those things. So the first thing is, as he begins to move out, he's losing a lot of boats due to the German submarines and things of that nature. So FDR and him will work out a deal, and it's called the Bases for Destroyers deal. Okay, we're basically going to give up old U.S. destroyers to the English in return for some bases. And we got some bases in Bermuda, we got some bases in Guam, different things. And you can tell here's the USS Buchanan, named after a president, which later becomes Her Majesty's, right? Her Majesty's ship, the Campbelltown. And so our boats are called USSS, or USS, US ship. Theirs are called Her Majesty's ship, referring to the Queen, of course. U.S. Crown and Shield becomes Her Majesty's ship Chelsea, and U.S. Able P. Umsford becomes Her Majesty's ship Clare. So we gave them boats in return for bases. Now FDR backs this up by still saying, hey, completely neutral. How did he do this? This doesn't seem neutral, does it? He says, we didn't make any money, which is entirely right. But if this were true, we would have had to offer boats to the Germans, which we didn't. So how can he defend this? How can he defend neutrality to Congress in doing this? He uses a very important term here, and it's called arsenal of democracy. He basically says, we are the most powerful nation in the world. At this point, we are. And he says, so it's our purpose, and it's our responsibility to make sure that democracy has an arsenal. In other words, that the nations like England and France and other ones that are democratic have things to fight with. And so he says, the basis for destroyer deal, I was basically saving democracy. That sounds vaguely familiar because if you remember back to Wilson, didn't he say we were going to war to make the world safe for democracy? Are you noticing a trend here? And so that's good. Now, let's move on to this. Hitler cannot use his full attack of the Blitzkrieg on England. Why? How about because England's an island? Right? So they have to essentially try to bomb England into submission. And so you can see here the little blue things are the Luftwaffe fighter bases and bomber bases. And you have this, and you can see here this dark line is considered high level radar, which will come into that. And this dotted line here is low level. Basically, when they hit high level, you have maybe, 30 minutes to an hour. When they hit here, you got to find some safety quick. And this is important because it saves basically all these things. Now, these cartoons here, we started coming up with stuff like the mad brute of Germany is devouring the world. It's probably made by somebody French. So, what do we need for the Battle of Britain here? Battle of Britain is a very massive aerial battle, meaning involving a lot of planes, bombs, etc. because of England's geography. They're an island, and so that essentially saves them. Now, the two people in play here, the two air forces, the German air force is called the Luftwaffe, see it right here, and the English Air Force is called the RAF. It stands for Royal Air Force. Now, this bombing of Britain takes on, it lasts for a very long time, and England is losing a lot of supplies, and in fact, the U-boats, the German submarines, come and basically blockade the top of England and try to cut them off. And so they're trying to starve them out and make them surrender. So the FDR in 1941 goes in and acts our farthest thing that we can to helping people out. And it's known as the Lend-Lease Act. Now, notice England is here. China, as I said before, remember they're engaged in that civil war with the communists. We're trying to help them out. And then, of course, there's the Philippines. And the Philippines are trying to fight off the Japanese. So basically, Lend-Lease, all right? Some people call this a Neutrality Act, some people don't. It happens in 1941. The Lend-Lease is where America says, we are going to aid our allies in their wars, in their battles. England with Nazis, the Chinese with the communists, and these people with the Japanese. We're going to do as much as possible, save we get involved. Meaning, we're not going to get involved, but we're going to give you anything you need. Now to Dr. Seuss, he goes with this, truly encouraging how much of this stuff drifts into British ports. And see, it says, U.S. Lend-Lease, we were willing to go 2/3 of the way to England, and they really didn't even have to pay us cash at the time. They just had to agree to sign a lease and lend it, and then eventually they'd get it back, correct? So this is really going through. Now, who received the most of Lend-Lease? Well, let's think about this for a second. Here's a good little thing from 1941 to 44 when we had Lend-Lease exports. Soviet Union got over $5 billion, right? Whereas over here, the United Kingdom got over $9 billion, and they received 43% of all of our stuff. That's astounding, considering that. And so, the other thing is, remember, this is allies. So, you don't see Germany on here. You don't see Japan or Italy, do you? We've essentially picked sides, and Germany understands that. And so Germany basically agrees to ramp up their attacks on our boats. Now, they have U-boats much like they did before, but the U-boats are much more sophisticated now. They do not have to surface completely out of the water. They're basically untraceable. Sonar is there. They do have depth charges, etc. And in France, they actually built this really cool bunker. It's called the Pen, and at one point, it actually took what was called a bunker buster bomb, came in over the top and hit it like this, and we had concrete, we had a gap, we had concrete, we had a gap. Anyway, it took a direct hit and survived it. I mean, this is a engineering marvel how they did this to protect their U-boats, because their U-boats were the unseen enemy. They were the ones that were sinking the ships. So a U-boat is a German sub, and they are key in the Atlantic. By that I mean the Atlantic Ocean, and they're taking things out, right? So in the end, what saved England? Now remember, we did provide some stuff to help them out. But the first thing is, and you saw on the map there, is radar, okay? Radar is developed this time, and it's a crude form of this, but the idea is that radar, you can detect a plane minutes before it's there, and you can get people to safety, reduce the casualty rate, and then people can come out when the planes are gone. So we have to have things in place to act on radar. Okay, now this is really cool. Until your eyes get used to the darkness, take it easy. Look out in the blackout. England had what were called blackouts, and blackout means you were to turn out the lights in the city, and they were going to cut all the power. And why are you doing this? Because the planes have lights on the bottom, so that you could see the planes on the lights on the bottom, and so the people shooting could see the planes with their anti-aircraft guns. Now here's another really cool thing. It tells you, and this is actually a U.S. blackout, but it tells you what to do. If you're in a household, you stay at home, you put out lights in rooms not blacked out, you don't use matches, you don't use lights outdoors, you don't let any light escape from your home. Pedestrians, you walk, you don't run. You keep close to buildings, away from curbs. You don't smoke. You don't use matches or flashlight. You don't cross streets you cross at intersections, and you get under cover when you're told. Motorists, when a blackout is given, you park at the curb at once. You put out all your lights, and you get to some type of shelter. Now, in a blackout, you can see here you'll be assisted by an air raid warden. Okay, here's an air raid warden. Basically, the whole idea of an air raid warden is they would stand up on top of the rooftops or elevated point, and they were the ones who would see the plane, hear the call from the radar, and issue the blackouts. And so by this way here, England was saved because of radar, because of air raid wardens, because of blackouts, and Hitler has to try something different in 1941, and so we'll talk about what that is in the next video.